Hello and welcome. My name's Angie Holden and I'm the blogger behind The Country Chic Cottage. Now I've talked about a lot of printers around this YouTube channel. Sublimation printers, DTF printers, white toner printers. But how do those compare with each other and which one is right for you? The answer is going to be dependent on the type of crafter you are and your needs at this time. So what I'm going to attempt to do in this video is give you a brief overview of what each of those printing methods are, and then the pros and cons of each and sort of how they compare with one another. Hopefully this will be your guide to making a decision on which printer you need for your craft room, your studio space, or your small handmade business. So first let's talk about what each of the printing methods are. A sublimation printer is a printer that prints with a special ink. So it prints with sublimation ink and you print on sublimation paper. You then use heat to transfer that ink to special sublimation blanks. The sublimation blanks need to be a light color or white, and they also need to have some type of polyester content, whether that is polyester fabric, at least 65% polyester fabric, or whether that is a poly coating that is applied to a hard surface blank. The three things that are needed are sublimation ink, heat source, as well as that sublimation blank that has some sort of polyester content. Sublimation itself is a chemical reaction, and it takes those three things to make that chemical reaction occur. Moving on to DTF printing. A true DTF printer prints on clear film, either on sheets or rolls, and it prints with 5 colors of ink. So the 4 regular colors of black, cyan, yellow, and magenta, along with white. So a DTF printer does have white ink, and it prints with that white ink. So you send your design through a RIP software and it translates it to print with that white ink, and then it prints mirrored onto your film. Now the DTF printer itself is only part of the process. So yes, you have a printer that prints, but you also have to do several other things to that print to make it ready to put on garments. You have to powder it and then cure that powder. Then you're ready for the pressing portion of the DTF, where you take heat to transfer that image to fabric surfaces. Now it can be any type of fabric surface. So we are talking cotton, polyester, cotton poly blends, any type of blend, and also any color, because it prints with white ink. Then the third on our list is white toner printing. White toner printing is a toner printer. So it doesn't have ink, it has toner, so it prints with a powder-like substance. That is a toner that comes in cartridges. You can print to a variety of papers or mediums with a white toner printer, and depending on what type of paper you choose would be what you put that on. So for instance, I used Forever Dark in a recent video and I put it on a dark colored garment. So with white toner printing, white's in the name, so again there is white toner within the process. It does only have 4 colors, or the printer I used did, so there is no black. So it uses a mixture of colors for the black portion but adds white toner to that mix. You run your image through a RIP software in order to translate it to print with those 4 colors, and then it prints onto whatever medium that you choose to print to. Now a white toner print comes out completely dry. However, it's not really ready to press when it comes off of that printer. So most papers you're going to have to marry them with something else. So at the time of printing, you basically have toner that is on a film. You need some type of adhesive. So you marry those two together using a heat and heat press to marry that adhesive to that film. And then once that process is complete, it is ready to press. And you can press your white toner print to a variety of surfaces. So a white toner print can be used on, yes, clothing, and even dark color garments, cotton poly blends, tons of different variety of garments, but it can also be used on hard surfaces and mylar balloons, and tons of different surfaces can be used with a white toner printer depending on the paper that you pick. So it does have a wide variety of applications. So if you want to get in depth into any one of those and exactly what it is, I do have videos on each individual one, and I will link to those in the description below this video. But now that you have an overview of what each one is, what are sort of the pros and cons, and why would you need each of these printing methods? So a sublimation printer is the least expensive of the 3 options we're discussing today. You can get those in a wide variety of price ranges. A converted Epson EcoTank printer is on the lowest end, where a Sawgrass printer is on the highest end. I've also reviewed a Brother sublimation printer, the Epson F170. there's a variety of printers in a variety of price points. They are overall way less expensive than DTF or white toner, so there's less investment to get started. Now, at the lower end of the pricing spectrum with a sublimation printer, you are going to have a printer that requires more manual maintenance, some color correction, some things that you need to do on your part manually in order to make the process work. So it can be a little frustrating on that low end of the price point. Once you get into like the Brother sublimation printer, the Sawgrass sublimation printer, I find those more expensive, yes, but easier to set up and way less frustrating. They do their own maintenance, and I can just leave those printers and print whenever I need to. As long as they're plugged up, they do their own maintenance, and I don't have to worry about it. So overall, I like the mid to high price sublimation printers, and those are what I recommend if you can afford them. Now, sublimation, while it is amazing, I get amazing results with sublimation, and I gasp almost each and every time I pull back that sublimation print. I also love the way that sublimation actually becomes part of the blank. So it's, in the case of a shirt, it actually embeds into the fibers and becomes part of the shirt. That means that it's extremely long lasting. It will last as long as probably the blank will last in most cases. So overall, it is a very easy process that is not expensive to get into and creates stunning and amazing results. Now, what you may get tired of is the polyester content, the need to purchase special blanks that can get expensive, and overall the lack of being able to print on like a cotton garment or a dark colored shirt. Without some sort of hack that is not kind of part of the process and degrades the longevity of sublimation, you really can't do those types of things. So yes, while sublimation is amazing and it is super popular, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. It can be frustrating for a few different reasons, which is why people are moving towards DTF and white toner printing for their handmade businesses especially. If you have a handmade business and you are wanting to print on a cotton and dark colored garments, then you might want to think about DTF and white toner printing. Or purchase prints from someone else, because we're going to talk about the investment costs. So when we talk about the investment costs, don't think that you have to make that investment up front. If you just want to try something like DTF prints, then you can just order the prints from a place like Heat Transfer Warehouse and give that pressing portion a try. Don't worry about the equipment investment and all of the ins and outs of maintaining your printer. So let's talk about some of the cons of DTF printing. It is very expensive to get into. The whole entire printer bundle is going to run you $3,000 to $4,000. And the printer itself is very high maintenance. It requires a ton of maintenance. Like every time you use it, you need to do a maintenance before you start up and when you shut down. No matter if you're just starting it up to print like one sheet. So the maintenance itself can get very frustrating. I also have safety concerns with DTF printing as it currently is done today. So what you do is you print out the DTF print and then you need to powder it. The powder is where the safety concerns come in for me. So most people powder in something like a tub and they add that DTF powder to that wet ink that's on the film. Now, that powder is a very fine microplastic powder. It gets everywhere. If you are going to do the printing powdering process at home, I recommend all safety regulations. Wear a mask, wear gloves, wear something to cover your clothing, something like an apron, wear protective goggles, use all of the safety precautions that you can because that powder will go everywhere, including your lungs, on your skin, and if you're using it in your home, it will get into your home. I do also recommend an oven for the curing process. So after you powder, you cure that print, and I recommend an oven to do that because the oven comes with an air filter that will filter all of those fumes. The fumes come in when you're curing that DTF powder the first time. I personally will not cure my DTF powder on a heat press that's open with just hovering the heat press over the DTF powder. Those fumes are just going everywhere. So I would recommend proper ventilation when you are powdering as well as curing, and then use an oven with an air filter. So that's part of that initial investment portion that I was talking about, where it is a pricey initial investment. But once you get through that pressing, powdering, curing stage, the pressing portion of DTF is so simple. That's where the pros come in for me. So it is a very simple pressing process. It is very easy to press. I have pressed it with tons of different heat press options. It does great every single time. And I love the way it feels on the shirt. So the feel of it is, it sits on top of the shirt, but it is like very thin. So all it is basically ink and some adhesive. So it does feel very thin on the surface, and the wearability is amazing, and it also stretches. So all of those combined make me really love DTF, the pressing portion of it. I do hope that in the future we get better printers and more safety regulations around the powder aspect of DTF printing. If those two things were fixed, I would have a DTF printer in my home. But for now, I'm going to opt to order DTF prints when I want to use DTF on a project. So next on our list is white toner printing, pros and cons. A white toner printer is about the same price as a DTF printer or slightly more expensive, depending on the brand that you purchase. Now, a white toner printer, one of the primary benefits for me is that it is a zero maintenance printer. I can print today, I can unplug it, plug it back in 3 months, and print again. I don't have to perform any maintenance when I'm starting up, when I'm shutting down. It is a maintenance-free printer. Because it is a toner printer, there isn't any maintenance required for those type of printers. So that's one reason that I am drawn to having a white toner printer, because I personally would not use it as much as a small business. My primary use is to make video content for you, which means that I'm not using it as often as a small business. So it's one of my reasons for having a white toner printer in my craft room. Now, the other benefit to me of white toner printing is it has been around a while. There are tons of different papers that you can print on, different effects you can get. And then because it's been around so long, there's tons of information out there on it. How to do different things, how to make different things. Tons of people that have experimented with making different types of projects with white toner printing. There's so much information, and it makes the process way easier. I did find the setup of the printer and the use of the printer extremely easy. Now, the pressing process of white toner printing is where my cons come in. So with the pressing process, I do think you're going to need a full-size heat press that can apply heavy pressure. I just feel like you get better results with that. You will get more consistent wearability results when you do the pressing portion correctly with white toner printing. So what you're going to do is during that marrying process, and when you press it to the garment, you're going to want some medium to heavy pressure, and you're going to want that to be consistent. So a good heat press is going to be required for that. Then I also think the pressing portion of white toner printing is where you're going to have a learning curve. So probably each of the printing methods I talked about during this video have some type of learning curve along the process. That's where it's going to be for white toner printing. However, I did get great results even after just a few experiments. So I don't think it's a very long learning curve, but probably each different project that you pick, you might ruin a few as you get your methods down for pressing. So the pressing portion is where you're going to need to experiment a little bit and decide what works best for your situation. Then the print itself has a great feel. If we're talking about feel on garments, it feels really great on the garments. Similar to a DTF print, I did find that white toner printing got a better feel after I ran it through the laundry a few times. So that was interesting to me that after I ran it through the laundry, it still looked the same and it looked amazing and vibrant. However, it felt better after I ran it through the laundry a few times. You might want to keep that in mind. So, but I did feel after a couple times to the laundry, it felt similar to a DTF print. So I think those are similar as far as feeling. Because with the white toner, you just have the toner itself, and then you marry it with that adhesive, and that's all you have. It does sit on top of the shirt, similar to that DTF we talked about, or an HTV type product if you're familiar with HTV. So how do you decide between these three methods for your needs? So first of all, I would think about what are you going to make? What type of projects are you going to make? Can those all be accomplished with some type of sublimation blank or a light color polyester garment? Then sublimation printing is probably for you. It's a very permanent method of application, and as I stated, it's the least expensive printing method that we've talked about. Next up, I feel like DTF and white toner printing both have pros and cons, and it is going to depend on how much you have to invest, how much the safety concerns bother you with DTF printing, and then do you have, for the white toner printer, do you already have the heat press needed to apply that heavy pressure? Or would you need that additional investment, and can you add that to the investment you're already making? So what type of investment are you willing to make? What type of projects are you going to make? And then, are you going to use this for your handmade business? Then with something like the DTF printer or the white toner printer, you can think about selling the prints that you make. So perhaps you're not going to use one of those enough to justify the spend for your own business, but if you could sell the prints, you might be able to justify the cost. So think about selling the prints off of one of those as well to justify the cost and make it a win-win situation for your handmade business. And then if you need help deciding, drop down in the comment section, ask me any questions that you have. Tell me about what you are wanting to do with your printer, what types of things you're wanting to make, what type of investment you want to make, and hopefully I can help guide you to the right solution for you. Because I do think it's an individual decision. Each person is going to make a different decision about what type of printer is right for them, their craft room, their studio, their handmade business. It really just depends on where you are on your journey, which printer is going to be right for your needs. Now, if you liked this video and it helped you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We have videos just like this one every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss any of those. So thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.